Welcome back to Pokemon Platinum. It's daytime now. Yay! I recorded it at a different time.
Good.
But more importantly, at the end of last part, I got Ice Beam for Victorian, so I have coverage.
Okay, so
Because it's
life just
just
got a
playing that.
hell of a lot less painful,
You, you,
because...
you
Yeah.
you got ice cream?
Ice Beam.
Oh, okay. I misheard. I was gonna
Hey
say
man,
like,
I'd be okay
I
with
mean,
ice
I mean,
cream.
I mean, Aurora Beam's okay, but Ice Beam is just better in every functional way.
I think Aurora Beam can't freeze
It's also lower power.
and lower power. It has some other benefit though. Hold on, it's gonna bother me if I don't
you
look it
know,
up.
I have a bone to pick with Persona, and it's like 4 moves per Pokemon system, which really seriously pisses me off because like your Pokemon has to be so limited in what it can do that you really only have one strategy with each Pokemon. And you can't adapt to changing circumstances without wasting a turn changing your Pokemon. So the combat system really pisses me off in that way. Oh,
Well, what I think they should do is either
Oh, it can lower attack, but it's like a 10% chance, so it's
who
pretty...
cares?
Yeah, and the attack power is much weaker, so Aurora Beam kind of is not
yeah,
good for mid-late game.
and that kind of that's kind of what I was going to talk about with this whole tangent is like you have moves that are lower powered but have higher PP counts, so you can use them against weaker enemies in like random battles and stuff. And then you have stronger moves that you can use like 10 times or 5 times or something.
Yeah.
Where you
Yeah, what I think that, like I said, what I think they should do at this point is let you effectively keep all your moves, and you assign them.
Yeah,
at any
that
point.
would be a way to do it. But like another way to do it would be to just stop limiting us to 4 moves per Pokemon. I mean, look at Shin Megami Tensei; they have 8 moves. It's
Yeah,
fucking glorious.
it's just something that they would have to completely redesign the way the competitive
Oh,
battle
cry
works.
more.
I know. Like, I don't care either, but it would drastically, because especially from I would agree in that it would make the main game more interesting, because if you have more options, then the game can more reasonably expect you to have to use more interesting strategies, which I think is a good thing. But in terms of a competitive thing where you only get one action per turn and your opponent also only gets one action per turn, if you can kind of just generally know that their options are limited, then because there are some Pokemon whose move pools are wide enough that they can have types that make them super effective against like nearly every kind of Pokemon. So basically, what that means is that like because I think like Pokemon like Nidoking, for example, can learn like type coverage moves to have a super effective attack against almost everything.
Yeah, I
So
get
it
you.
would make them. It would make the. I think it's worth trying. At the very least, maybe in a spin-off or something. I
Like,
think it would be cool to do
like
in the
maybe
main
not go as
series
far as
too.
8 moves, but like 6.
Even six I think would add a lot of variety. And I mean, granted, I think a lot of Pokemon purists wouldn't like that, but at the same time,
Uh,
Pokemon purists are also asking for stuff to be changed up. So,
yeah,
yeah,
we've been fighting with this 4 move battle system for how many generations now?
all of them.
Going into 8.
Yeah, I think we've had enough time with the four move battle system. At this point, if they substantially change the battle system, and you have a problem with that, I think you're just like, why do you want to play the same game for 20 more years? You've already played it for 20 years.
Yeah, like I don't necessarily mind that the gameplay is similar. I kind of like honestly, the battling in Pokemon is not really what keeps me coming back, all things considered. I much prefer like exploring the worlds and stuff like that and just experiencing the whole thing.
Well,
So
yeah,
that's kind of I more want from a Pokemon game to have a more fleshed out world. That's more what I want.
yeah, but the battling doesn't grab you. That's kind of a sign that the battling is underwhelming, and I think it's underwhelming because the limited move pools that each Pokemon have turn it into a system where the only real variable is how much grinding you've done in various different ways, whether it's for a specific items or whatever, or for actual levels, or for breeding the perfect Pokemon so that when you do level up, you get the best points or whatever. Um, The point is, you've won your battle or lost your battle before the battle starts, because it's all down to the numbers you already have when the battle starts.
Well, there's always mind games, but yeah, it is.
How do you
one
play
thing that,
mind games when your opponent has as few options as you?
For competitive, there's lots.
Yeah, for competitive, there's like which Pokemon you start off with first and stuff like that can make a lot of difference. I mean, granted, I don't find competitive Pokemon particularly interesting to watch, but that's just my opinion.
My point is, it's all in the preparation, and the preparation in this case mostly comes down to grinding and farming. So you're spending a lot of time to get your numbers up and to get a specific team set up, and it's kind of like a bad trading card game, or a good trading card game to a lesser extent, but it's still true of good trading card games. Who am I kidding? Where the deck you build at the beginning is pretty much the entire thing. What you do during the battle is try to get the one thing you already decided before the battle was your win condition.
So, one thing that I think, at the very least, would make that a much more manageable system, and this is something I've been thinking for a long time, is there are apps on, like, browser apps even, where you can just play competitive Pokemon online. And you can immediately set up whatever team you want with whatever Pokemon using, like, menus and choose specifically which EVs and IVs you want and whatnot, and it makes a process that can take dozens of hours in the games take like 10 minutes tops. I honestly think that they should do that for the main games. Like, maybe not to that significant of an extreme.
What? Just
you know,
have
to the
like
point-
just have a side mode where you can pick whatever Pokemon and battle with them.
yeah, basically, kind of like think Pokemon Stadium. Actually,
Except
but with
good?
more customized. Yeah, except good with more you know, you can pick Alakazam and then it automatically has the best stats. You can assign what nature you want, which moves you want, and then it just makes the competitive part of the battling really easy to do, because at the end of the day, a lot of the elements that make Pokemon a competitive game kind of get in the way of it being a casual game. And so if you can separate the two modes and then also make the competitive parts convenient for the people who want to be competitive while they're at it, you end up with, I think, a much better experience for both crowds.
Here's the thing.
which
I
is
don't
good.
think the competitive Pokemon community would like that, because they feel the effort they put in to become competitive entitles
Well,
them
then they're being assholes. Then they're like the people who are like, "Oh, well, I played my student loans," and it's just like, "Great, you had your student loans in the 1980s." Shut
Okay,
up.
yeah, I just had a conversation with someone like that, like, yesterday, and yeah. Okay.
So if they're actually upset about that, then they can eat a dick, you know, like. But you know, in general, I think most people would be glad not to have to breed 30 hours in order to get the perfect Chimchar. You know, like, I think a lot of people would be glad to not have that tedium and to be able to jump right into what makes competitive battling fun to them.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I kind of feel like a lot of the elements that go into competitive play are more effective when you're not playing competitive. Like, okay, you can breed these Pokemon, and it's like, okay, for competitive play, the breeding system is like Chocobo breeding in Final Fantasy VII. It takes 10 bajillion hours, and you're just doing it to get the best possible outcome. In a single-player game, it's like a digital pet system, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people find a lot of cool roleplay aspects to the Pokemon breeding, and I wouldn't want to take that away from them as well.
Yeah.
So
having that system in the single-player game gives value to both crowds, but in different ways. And the way it adds value to the competitive crowd, unfortunately, roadblocks the casual crowd from really even taking an interest. Because if you're playing competitive online Pokemon with the team that you beat single-player adventure with, you're getting curb stomped.
yeah.
And it's really discouraging to find that you need to spend like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours getting the best possible values, not even with the Pokemon that you have in your team, but with Pokemon that you're going to breed from the Pokemon that you have in your team to get better versions of them and replace them with. It's like, you know, I spent the last 30 hours forming an emotional connection to these specifically nicknamed Pokemon that I went on an inspiring Pokemon journey with, and you want me to just breed them and replace them with their babies? Okay. There's a disconnect here.
Oh god, Ultimate Muscle is basically that, where the dad got too fat and so his kid has to do the fighting instead. I mean, that was a good show. That was like an actually really good. Ultimate Muscle was a good show. It's a shame that it was actually even the 4Kids dub was pretty good from what I remember. It was one of those shows that on Foxbox it aired at like 6 in the morning, so I only ever rarely watched it. But I remember enjoying it. But it was only years after when I found out that it was actually a sequel anime to one that we never got in the West. It
Well,
blew
because
my
the original
mind.
show was from the 70s.
Good grief. You know,
Yeah.
the thought I just had is that Pokemon at Endgame is like an MMORPG at Endgame. You're just repeating the same stuff over and over again for better numbers until the next generation or expansion comes out. And then everything is obsolete. You have to start the whole process over again on a new endgame.
Which is why the Pokemon MMO is A, a perfect match, and B, will end society as we know it.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite webcomics, is just like, they did it. They finally made the Pokemon MMO. Society has not functioned in 6 months, or something like that is how it goes.
And the only way to break people out of it is they find Gabe Newell actually working on Half-Life 3.
And then
I forgot that part.
when it comes out, they'll probably like be hailing it as revolutionary. But like Shin Megami Tensei already had an MMO, so it's gonna be
apparently, Imagine is apparently really bad. Though.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but apparently it is. Although the remixes in it are really, really goddamn good. Like, I need to play some of the other games because apparently, like, the Raihu Kozunoha games remixed the Fiend theme, and it was, like, hard rock and metal and awesome. And normally that theme is, like, more slow and ominous, and it's just like you ran into a skeleton dude, and your face is literally going to get ripped from your skull because you messed with Matador, and you don't mess with Matador without getting your eyes ripped from their sockets.
Man, that is the first major roadblock in Nocturne is fucking Matador.
I need to play Nocturne still. Like, the PS2 SMT games are next on the chopping block for me. And, I mean, I might as well get to them because Shin Megami Tensei 5 is never coming out. So, you know, might as well, right? Have you seen this game? It's been missing for 6 months.
You're gonna have a good time with Nocturne, I think.
Yeah, well, I like it. It has a different vibe than SMT 4, which I think I'll appreciate it. It's
SMT
darker.
4 was weird in that it was trying to channel the spirit of Persona without actually being a Persona game.
I like it a lot, but there are some weird aspects.
Yeah, like the
to
fact
it.
that they replaced the Shin Megami Tensei character designer with the Persona character designer.
Yeah. Which, I mean, granted, it's still one of my favorite RPGs, but it's definitely a weird game, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good starting place for Shin Megami Tensei in terms of gameplay, but I don't know. Like, I'm not always entirely sure in terms of, like, story depth. Well, not story depth, because I think the story is pretty good in that game, but in terms of, like, tone, I'm not always sure whether or not it's a good starting point. I've kind of found that even though Persona's very popular, and it does a lot of things to be accessible to general audiences, it's not usually a great starting point for many people if you want to get them into SMT, because it's such a different game.
Yeah.
In terms of tone and stuff. It's just like people don't want a game that's that depressing, you know, if they play. Not that Persona's not dark, but it's certainly not as dark as mainline, where, you know, everything's depressing and you're gonna die.
Persona is about optimism prevailing over darkness, so it's very lighthearted in tone until shit goes down. And then shit goes down and it gets dark for a little while and then it brightens up. It's like that.
Yeah. Whereas Shin Megami Tensei is, there are no good choices. Everything sucks. Your best friends are going to betray you.
The world is literally ending and/or has already ended. In Nocturne's case, it has already ended, yes.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, you know, it's just like, literally, I don't think there's a single mainline game where, like, any of your friends actually survive. They either die or become bad.
Yeah,
so,
Nocturne's one of the ones where they become bad, I think.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, the ones that do survive become evil, and then you kill them. Or you team up with them, but they're clearly out of their mind, and you're doing something terrible as well because you got the Law Arceus ending, which means that you're going to be the one destroying the world now. Have fun. I love SMT. It's depressing. I don't know why I like it so much.
It's interesting to delve into darker ideas from time to time. I just wish the gaming industry would stop fucking overdoing it, because, like, it only works when you're doing it once in a while.
Which is why I'm glad that they don't release a mainline game very often.
Yeah.
Like, the last SMT4 came out, like, what, 2013? So it's been a good couple of years. I think the having a game like that, you can't play. I don't think you can binge SMT the way you can binge a lot of other games in a row, because you just become desensitized to everything around you.
There's also a lot of Shin Megami Tensei storytelling is minimalist, and if you were to try and marathon that, you get some barren wasteland burnout pretty quickly.
In many ways, the plot's actually the storytelling. I'm going to say, not the plot, because the plots are very different. But the storytelling in Shin Megami Tensei is actually kind of similar to Pokemon, in that the plot is somewhat light a lot of the time. Or, well, not light, but there are lots of sections where a lot of events aren't happening very often, but the world building is always present.
Yeah, it's thinly spread, but the world is interesting to explore and interact with.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. And then
are we still in this fucking gym?
Yeah.
No, we're in the galactic buildings.
Oh, okay. I literally have not been paying attention, so
we can tell.
Yeah, I could tell. It's a relevant tangent though, because Shin Megami Tensei was the series that did the Pokemon thing before Pokemon. It just did it in a really dark and not all that kid-friendly way.
I mean, I will say this. Out of all of the monster collecting games, I think that Pokemon has the best system for actually catching the monsters. Because Shin Megami Tensei
was a pain in the ass.
Well, the old games are a pain in the ass. The newer games are a pain in the ass, but more charming about it. So, like, the demon negotiation, and also the old Shin Megami Tensei games, like, had systems in place that limited how much you could use the demons, which is counterintuitive, considering that's the main draw of your game. So, yeah. Like, just having the Pokemon be there and being able to catch them in the ball, I think is a good way to do it. Whereas other games, like, I love Dragon Quest, but I'm not a huge fan of how many of the Dragon Quest games do monster catching, where it's almost completely random and there are very few ways to boost the odds in your favor. Whereas, Pokemon lets you
use a better ball.
Buy a better ball or do things in battle in order to improve your odds.
Yeah, weaken them, give them status ailments, all that stuff.
So the actual process of catching doesn't feel like as much of a grind as in, say, SMT or Dragon Quest, where it's just like, okay, I gotta grind until I find the enemy I want, and then in Dragon Quest's case, you just have to keep on killing them and hope it joins you. Or in SMT, you have to go through the nightmare that is the demon negotiation and hope that Jack Frost is done being a punk and will just join you already. Jack Frost is a punk, alright?
He is.
But I thought he was your homeboy.
He is my homeboy. He's also an asshole. And that's part of why... that's part of why SMT is great, is because you've got your typical, lovable mascot character, and you're used to them being, cutesy and whatnot. And instead, Jack Frost is just like, buy it or I'll commit suicide. And you're like, what? And he's like, you heard me. I'm not joking. That's an actual line from, I think that's actually Imagine, is there's a shopkeeper, Jack Frost, and he's got stuff out and he's like, buy something or I'll commit suicide.
A character in Judgment pulls that trick, pulls exactly that kind of, scam on you in one of the side quests where you get hustled into drinking at a bar and they tell you that the drink's going to be so cheap, but then they pile service charges on that drive the price up into the stratosphere, and then the bartender threatens to stab herself if you don't pay, and you have to just deal with it and then do this whole stalking mission to find out some blackmail material on her to get your money back from her.
Aren't you supposed to be like an actual good guy
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Judgment, though?
you're a
'Cause
private.
you're the detective.
You're a private detective, yeah, but you just got swindled by these swindlers who are swindling other people. So you're getting back at them, trying to get your money and stop them from scamming people. So it's kind of like just vigilante justice, I guess.
Oh yeah, you're a PI, so you're allowed to be chaotic good as opposed to lawful good.
Yeah, you're not wrong.